Welcome to Inspiring Nimbleness. Step inside and join our conversation about how to create innovation in the nonprofit world. Join me, Brent Neilsen, and my co-host Ron Hays as we explore the latest trends and rhythms in the social sector. On the table today, elders without shelter.
Well, the reason we chose the elderly homeless as a place to focus on is that's the fastest growing sector in the homeless population is the elderly. And by elderly, we're talking probably 55 plus. Mm-hmm. The aspect of that is that there's some unique aspects to that particular population that make housing difficult.
Okay.
First of all, they don't need as much space. Mm-hmm. They don't have a family per se. Usually it's one or two individuals per household.
Yep.
Second, their mobility is challenged. And so their abilities to take care of themselves and to be more self-sufficient, mm-hmm. It's better with a smaller place than a larger place.
Oh, of course.
And so as long as they have enough space to adequately live, it's probably better to confine it to that minimal amount of space that they particularly need. Mm-hmm. And hence a tiny house, if it's set up correctly, would suffice for their space. Now you look at here, me right now sitting, I am occupying probably 4 square feet, mm-hmm. 2 feet each way. So that's all I'm occupying. Yep. And if I move over to the side, I will occupy that much more square footage. Mm-hmm. But I will only take so much space within the context of the overall layout to meet my minimal needs, to meet my, and more than meet my needs. Yep. The other part of that is the ability to maneuver around, mm-hmm. not having obstacles such as small doorways, having larger doorways, having the ability to get into a shower with a handhold that you can hold on to. Mm-hmm. Those kind of things are important. The other part is that you want to have your appliances so that you don't have to lean way over, that you can see into your appliances at a higher level. You can place things without leaning over and not losing your balance or those kinds of things. Yeah. So the setup of housing for the elderly, from my perspective, is a really different type of thing, and you need to focus on that aspect. They may not be ADA, but you may want to be ADA friendly. In other words, not having barriers to step over, things like that. You don't want to step over to a bathtub. You want to walk in, shower. You want to be able to walk in with, if you're on a wheelchair, mm-hmm. But you're not wheelchair confined, be able to wheel up to it, be able to stand with a handhold and get right in the shower. Those kinds of. The other part of that is that you want a single flat level.
Mm-hmm. So are there any obstacles to being able to interface with the population or the target population, or is it pretty straightforward to get in front of people?
There's really a cry for it. We have a lot of seniors who are getting to a place where they can't manage where they are, but with a little bit of assistance could manage. Yeah. But having the right place to manage is a critical element of that. So that's why I talk about the design and layout is important. Yep. You don't want to have to go up to a huge set of steps to get into the place. Up to porch, you want a ground level entry, things like that. You want your thresholds to be such that you can go right through. You can work with a walker, a cane, or just a little bit of instability in your feet, but yet not getting hung up on a barrier. Those are critical parts.
What about the financial side of stuff? Because a lot of times, seniors are, they're getting rid of debt. They're paying out of stuff. How does that work?
Well, I think you need to look at the income side of things more than anything. What incomes do they have to get them? Because a lot of them don't have the assets base that some people have. They may not have any liquid assets or any actually tangible assets, real assets even, that they may have to help them as they go through this period. They're going through a period where they're no longer working or cannot work because of physical disabilities or age. And so they're restricted what they can do. And so their income then becomes fixed, finite. And often it's finite where their only income is Medicare,
Hmm.
or not Medicare, Social Security.
Or disability.
Social Security, yeah, and disability. Disability income is under $1,000.
Yeah.
The average Social Security for the average person is about $1,400.
Yeah.
And so that's the average. So you have a sector that's above average, a sector that's average, and a sector that's below average.
Mhm.
And the people we're talking about that are facing homelessness are typically the below average type of income.
Yeah.
So imagine right now in our region
Mhm.
that the average rent is $1,000, $1,100,
Yeah.
and their income is $1,000. That leaves nothing for food, nothing
Yep.
for anything else they need. The most experts define the limit for housing before you come housing burden at 30%.
Mhm.
But if we stretch it to 35%,
Yeah.
if you have an income that's at, let's say, $1,000 a month, and let's just use 1,000 so we can simply do the math
Mhm.
very quickly. $1,000 is not unreasonable to seek a lot of people with that income.
Right.
They can't live on that unless they can bring their housing costs down.
Uh-huh.
And so part of that, what we've been working on is trying to build a model where the housing costs can be provided at 30 to 35% of their income.
So $300.
$300 to $350. That's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay.
On $1,000 of income. Well, you can't find housing unless it's subsidized housing.
Right.
But the aspect of subsidy is that you have to have subsidy available. Typically, subsidized housing is a lot more expensive. You can't afford to build it,
Mhm.
and so you only have a limited amount of subsidy that will build houses.
Yeah.
How do you build enough houses to meet the need of the people?
Yeah. Well, so in Portland, it's interesting, the folks who are building the large condos,
Yeah.
they're always told when they get a commercial building permit, they have to build a certain percentage of low income housing. And to many of these developers, it's almost a punitive. It's almost if you want to build this, you have to, you're going to have to build this amount of low income housing. How do you avoid that? How do you make sure it's a net positive to the community?
I think you have to do the math.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, when they do social services, don't effectively do what I call the math. Okay, so let's say that you're going to be building a place,
Mhm.
and you want to be able to build it, and you want the income to cover the costs.
Yeah.
And to be able to finance it. If you can do that, you're going to have plenty of financing available in the private market. You're not going to have to worry about subsidy.
Yeah.
And so how do you build housing without subsidy? The issue that we were looking at was that I was talking with a builder who said he can't build affordable housing affordably.
Mhm.
And so we started looking at alternate methodologies to be able to build housing. And one of the areas that we looked at was one is the cost of land.
Mhm.
And by putting more places into a more condensed arena, not sardines, but
Right.
more arena, you can bring the cost down.
Okay.
But there are some things that you have to do within that, and that's the size of the house or the apartment.
Mhm.
And you're always seeing that in the private market. You're seeing 200 square foot apartments now being built for the general population.
Right.
Yet their costs are exorbitant as far as what it costs to rent one of those. It might be $1,000 a month to rent
Yeah.
200 square feet because of where it's at.
Mhm.
So if you do the math on that, and you you got to do it 35%. Let's use that figure.
Right.
If you do that and you build it 350, if you got financing at 5%, which I think you could probably do better than 5, but if you got
Mhm.
5%, your payments of 350 would cover $70,000 of debt.
Okay. Okay.
So that's doing the math.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is, can you build places good places for $70,000, and that includes the land, the development of the land, as well as the structure itself. And so what we were working with is being able to manufacture and do the tiny home type of,
Mhm.
of an approach that would also meet the physical needs of the people as well. So
Right.
I have a list of 8 goals that we've been trying to follow.
Uh-huh.
within respect of getting this kind of housing built. And we're trying to stay rigid with these, and that'll be another discussion.
Yeah.
But staying rigid with those goals, and if we can meet those goals and we can get housing at $70,000 a unit, then we could finance in the private market the housing that the senior population would need.
Yeah. So if somebody's watching and they're listening to this and they're saying, "Holy cow, this seems like the most urgent need out there," it sounds like a lot of this is commercial developers and it's pretty high level people getting involved. How does the average person get involved? What can they do to help and make this more of a reality?
I think there's several things that can happen within the respect of the average person getting involved. When you're talking the average affordable housing unit in Oregon right now, commercially built, is about $250,000 a door.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's no way that the average person could do that. But if it was $70,000 a door, then the average person who could potentially help subsidize and finance that. But remember, you can go to the banks and get the financing. It's not a matter of that. It's a matter of people working on it and committing to it and making a political force to make it desirable to do that. Mm-hmm. We have some natural barriers that are out there, such as property taxes. Yep. and SDCs, surface development charges that mm-hmm. Raise the cost of construction before you even open, before you even break ground. Yeah, that's correct. Okay. And so those kinds of things politically make it palatable that those things can be waived for this particular population, this particular kind of housing. Yeah. I think would be helpful.
So is this this would have to be an urban construction, or can this be someplace that's more remote? What's the balance there?
The elements of where you put it is that you have to look at what kind of infrastructure you have. For example, out in the country, you can't put 30 units on a single septic system. You have to have the septic infrastructure system, the water systems, and so that you can do it. You can do it in a suburban area. You can do it in an urban area. Mm-hmm. It'd be a little bit more tough to do it in a rural setting.
Okay. Seems like an important problem.
It is an important problem. The issue, from my perspective, has always been starts with the land.
Yeah.
And with the land, you have to have cities that are willing to look at it seriously and make the kind of code and zone changes necessary to make it safe but yet doable.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to have flash. We can put down here in the bottom third. We can put stuff up. If there's any organization people should reach out to, is there anyone you'd want to direct them to?
I think that I would probably have them connect directly with Emerald Flash. There's several groups that want to be involved, but we can first of all filter the elements of what people want to do and be involved, and mm-hmm. send them to the right place. Because a lot of people don't know how to get involved but want to get involved. The other part of it is we need to have a good, effective nonprofit organization, because then we can get property tax waivers and things like that will keep the cost down.
Yeah. So that's emeraldflash.net. Is that correct?
That's correct. Emeraldflash.net, and we can flash up an specific email for them to connect with.
So bigger picture, and maybe this is a conversation for the next, something for us to talk about later or the next time. What is your perspective on what we need to do to develop strategic leadership, both in the nonprofit world in the Willamette Valley, but just in general? What's happening and what needs to happen, and how do we make sure it's the correct thing to be doing?
I think you have to look at other examples of leadership and other examples that will wash over to the nonprofit world. Look back in the Cold War. During the Cold War, we had a set enemy, and we sort of had our focus on that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with the fall of the Soviet Union and the sort of a little bit of demise towards the Cold War, it's not totally demise, but we had leaders recognizing where do they need to focus. And I think one of the emerging trains of thoughts that I think we need to focus on is what's called VUCA,
Uh-huh.
which is the type of problems and the types of approaches that we need to take in a very complex, fast-moving world.
Okay.
And that's exactly what we are. So I think I think probably it would be good for a person to take a look at VUCA, and then how do we transform in a VUCA world to the leadership that we need. I think there's a lot of good stuff out there. There's emerging stuff out there. It's an emerging field. Not many nonprofit leaders are trained to operate in a VUCA world, yet that is where they are.
So that sounds like that's probably a big conversation that we should save for next time. So thank you very much for your time. We're just ticking in here at around 20 minutes, so we're gonna close this episode up and invite everyone back for the next time. Thank you very much.
I look forward to our next discussion.
Thanks. Thank you for joining us on Inspiring Nimbleness. Join us next time as we explore leadership, VUCA, and how it impacts all of us as we try to continue to inspire greatness.